and how was before Oracle and how is after Oracle? What changed or changed anything?
I would absolutely love to go back there. Some of my best friends I've made in relationships are made from those Latin America tours. So you probably know Edelweiss and Nelson from Uruguay and Rita from Argentina. And I was about to say Alex, of course, from Brazil, but of course Alex now works for Oracle. But yeah, and Francisco, who's based in Australia, but obviously has close ties to Chile. So many good memories from that tour, those tours. And so I would love to get back, but I live in hope.
Some years ago, for be a good DBA, you need to read the manual. Then you started to Google something, and now you just need to ask ChatGPT, and the ChatGPT will answer. So it's more democratically.
And whenever someone used to say to me, "I think there's a problem with the server," I would say, "I agree. It's probably you." But yeah, I say that. I say that. I would recommend anyone who's a speaker to go on the Yatra tour at least once, because it's just an amazing glimpse into Indian culture. And don't get me wrong, some of it is absolutely breathtaking. Some of it is quite confronting because India is such a diverse population. So why did we invent SQL? In fact, why did we invent any coding languages? Because natural language, by definition, has ambiguity and is not precise. We had to invent languages that were precise because we had precise requirements. I can imagine the comments already be like, "I was not born then. I was not born then. I don't know what he's talking about. What is this COBOL thing?" Jim, so you're telling me the stuff I do in my free time for fun is what you want me to do as a job? Yeah. And you're going to pay me to do this? Yeah. And he goes, "Yes." I was like, "Where do I sign? Where do I sign?" And so,
but a bad situation, huh?
Exactly. And to this day, I still say I have the best job in the world. I'm incredibly privileged to have this job at Oracle. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is really nice, and all the creative tech that you have, it's really nice. The creative tech approach that you use to share in your videos, and how do you explain? Not only me, but all the people that know you like and enjoy, because you got complex things, complex technical things, and share it in a very easy way to understand. And this is really nice.
Oh, thank you very much. I like storytelling, I suppose. I think storytelling is the best way to convey information.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And talk about your Oracle career. I always do a question about this when people become an Oracle employee, and how was before Oracle and how is after Oracle? What changed or changed anything for you?
So I joined Oracle, as I said. Stephen Feuerstein put out a call, and at the same time, Tom Kite was actually considering retirement from Oracle. And so it's interesting that sort of, as I said, it brings that original story back to a nice close, to have met Tom over Usenet and then to be looking after the Ask Tom site 20 years later I always find that quite an interesting little loop. But yeah, so I joined Oracle in 2015. Funnily enough, Stephen Feuerstein was one of the people that interviewed me. Tom Kite was one of the people that interviewed me. And I must admit, Tom said, "Well, we'll just have a friendly chat," because we'd known each other so well for that long. But joining Oracle for me, it wasn't necessarily the fact of being non-Oracle and joining Oracle that was the biggest departure for me. Was, as I said, I loved working in environments where people would come see you, you would have regular engagement with them. Probably the toughest part for me was I'd gone from that to a remote worker, because the management chain I reported to was in the US. And when I first joined Oracle, I obviously was keen to still stay in touch with people. And so when I signed up, I think for three or 4 days. I think maybe let's call it 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. But when I went into the local Perth office, the guys in there are lovely, but Perth office is mainly a pre-sales organization, and we now call it ACS, used to be called Customer Consulting Services. And as a result, vast majority of the staff there would always be out of the office, actually dealing directly with customers. And so it was I found it a real struggle, because I'd gone from an environment where I was constantly around people to I'd go in the office and the office is deserted. And then at home, obviously I was the only person at home. Because the office was deserted, I felt, well, I'm paying $25 a day in parking to come in to sit in an empty office with a coffee machine that's not as good as my one at home. So I switched that. I pivoted to being working at home 5 days a week because really it was the same for me. But that was a real struggle. It took me probably 2 or 3 months to get out of a real low spot because you go from an environment where you're constantly talking to people to where you're talking to no one. And even though I had a management chain because they were based in the US, yeah, we couldn't even do sort of like Slack chat and the like, or basic chat like that because they were 12 hours offset from me. So generally the communication was literally you send an email and next day you might get a response. Stephen, my original manager, was very good at that. He was very keen to have at least a once a week meeting with me, and so he would generally get up extremely early his time, and I would stay up late my time. So at least we could have like a sort of a 45-minute chat once a week. But that was about the only human contact I had, and that was really hard. I had a really tough 3 months, the first 3 months at Oracle, and at the time I thought this was a mistake. I've made a bad choice here, but I failed to distinguish between what the job role was, which was amazing, and the actual conditions of the job. And I found a way out of it. I sort of you eventually, like all new things, you eventually find your groove, you find your ways to remain productive and not get depressed or anything. And so probably after 3 months, I found my sweet spot and have loved it ever since.
Nice. And after Connor, all of these years working as a developer at DBA, there is a blog post that you posted, and the topic was the death of the DBA. So after all of these years working and seeing things happening and changing all the time, what do you think? The DBA is gonna be dead, or what is going on with the DBA career?
I suppose I'll reiterate I don't have the blog post in front of me, so hopefully I'm not lying here, but I think I reiterate what I think is in the blog post because this is still my view. Is the reason I say the death of the DBA is probably a better way of describing it nowadays would be the death of the specialist, in the sense that there used to be a huge demand in the IT career for someone who knew an incredible amount of knowledge about a very narrow field. So generally, most companies, they would have a group of developers and DBAs, but they would have few people that, like they would have a particular DBA and they were what we'd call like a production DBA. They knew backup and recovery absolutely backwards. They had a very narrow focus of knowledge and set of skills. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of companies still really could do with specialists in particular fields. However, the world continues to change. Even though I think that should be the case, the IT landscape has changed now where what most companies look for is generalists. They say, we want someone who can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of something else as well. And so they want a broad set of skills, and those skills don't necessarily have to be specialist skills. Now, I can understand that desire because you get sort of a more well-rounded workforce and you get people that can be assigned multiple tasks. You might have, that's where you look at things like DevOps. That's where the whole thing of DevOps comes up. Someone who can build a system, but deploy it and, pseudo manage it, understand the operations and networking, etc. So I understand the appeal. My worry is that in doing so, we run the risk. I shouldn't say we do. I say we run the risk of what I call mediocrity. You build applications that are just barely good enough because we have people who are, moderately skilled developers. And they're only moderately skilled because they've had to sacrifice that development time doing other things. They're also moderately skilled administrators, moderately skilled network engineers, moderately skilled operations engineers. Because they've had to spread themselves so thin, they've become competent at many things, but not amazing at one thing. So I think in general that works, but what you end up with is you run that risk. There's a thin line between competent and mediocre. And I've lost track of the number of applications I use nowadays where a good friend of mine used to call it, he used to call them blue sky applications. And that is applications that work when the sky is blue. As long as you use them in the exact same way that the developer thought you were going to use them and don't deviate from any path, the application seems to work. But the moment you hit some kind of boundary condition, the whole thing just collapses. And I'd be curious to hear from your viewers when they listen to this back. My view is nowadays, especially you use applications nowadays on the internet, I think the occurrences of you hitting a 404 or an unexpected error page on a web page seems to be climbing. As the demands of applications increase and the level of complexity increases, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that cyclic nature of IT, where we get a return to the need for specialists, where the application platforms have become so complicated. We need a CSS specialist. We need a JavaScript specialist. We need a database specialist. We'll need an orchestration specialist, because just having that base level of competency in all those things, I think runs a risk of having flaky applications. And maybe I'm just a dinosaur, but my view is applications seem to be getting less reliable as opposed to more reliable. That's one of the reasons I love products like Apex, Application Express, because it's simple and a lot of that robustness is built into the product, which once again gives you robust applications as opposed to flaky ones.
Nice. And we are not talking about AI to get things more interesting, but we are going to talk about AI in this context soon. And you asked what my opinion, what do I think about that, right?
Yeah.
I usually say that the DBA have main topic in the company, the old DBA, especially when you have an issue. And the DBA is a guy that, because of the work they do, they need to learn not only the database things, they need to learn a little bit about programming, a little bit about network and storage, operating system, and so on. So it's a profession that have a lack of skills, and not only the DBA stuff. We know that there are DBA that it's very focused on only all the DBA things, but most of the DBAs usually need to understand a little bit about other things. And why I'm saying this? Because if you took the DBA career 15 years behind, there isn't Exadata. So the DBA was like doing his work with many other professionals. And they come the Exadata. And the DBA started to do the things that other professionals usually do. They need to deploy the things, they need to handle the network and the storage and the operating system, apply the patches, the update the firmwares and things like that. That was not the DBA work 15 years late. And now we have cloud. We have another big change. And this is the line that I quickly compare. And with cloud, things are more compiled. Let me find the word in English, right? It's more, I would say easy, but it's not easy, because you can just click here and that and make things happen. But yeah, we have Exadata that make things easier. Now we have cloud that makes things more easier. But to do the click, to choose that option, you need to understand what you are doing. So
especially in the security frame, like in networking and security, especially. Yeah.
Exactly. Security, it's a really big issue with that. But the resource and the FinOps are other big things that I always like to mention, because it's easy to you click, choose, and make things happen with cloud. But what really is going on? What exactly is going on? Is this the best? It's good? What? This was analyzed to do like this, or you just are clicking and choosing and make things happen without care if this is good or not. And I'm saying this because the DBA that was before, it's the same that it's nowadays. But how you do this work, how you perform these things changed. But the concept, the ideas, and how you construct and build application systems, it's basically the same as it was before. But you need to change also with the technology. You will not be spending time on how you create a table space, on what is the size of the blocks you're going to use in your table space and data files and things like that. You need to know that this exists. But with cloud nowadays, it's easier. But you need to understand and have an idea of all of these things, how this works. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is that the DBA career is changing with the technology, and the ones that it's not changing, these people maybe are in risk.
Yeah. And one thing I should clarify is another thing that I do see with DBAs and IT professionals of all types is often people have a particular role. Or let me rephrase. often a DBA has a particular skill set and stays with that skill set, not because they're unwilling to change, is because it's a mechanism of power. And so those DBAs that basically have used their role as a way of being powerful in a company, and I mean those DBAs, developer says, I want to achieve this. The DBA says, well, I'm not letting you. The DBAs that don't incentivize progress, DBAs that hinder things being done for particular no reason, I think they will disappear. And I think that's a good thing. So I think any IT professional, whether it's a DBA, developer, project manager, whatever, those people that have basically put up barriers to others in order to protect their own little patch, I'm glad, cloud in particular is one of those things that has helped to break those barriers down. And those people that cling to those barriers, generally, I think they're going to struggle, but I think that's a good thing. I know that sounds brutal, but those IT professionals that have spent their lives being blockers, stopping things from being done, I think their time is coming to an end, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and in addition, um, uh, some years ago, for be a good DBA, you need like to read the manual, then you started to Google something, and now you just need to ask ChatGPT, and the ChatGPT will answer. So it's more democratically, and things are changing. And as I mentioned, DBA needs to change with all of this technology changing too. And I'm agree with you. The DBA is not the god as it was before, but it's still needed for many things nowadays. So with this change, of course.
And I would imagine, as I said, that cyclic nature of IT, as vibe coding becomes the thing, I think we'll start seeing vibe database designs, vibe data modeling, vibe coding. And I'm pretty sure that for the foreseeable future, anything that's been 100% vibe coded and especially a database that's been vibe designed, will certainly need an expert's hand to have a look at it before it goes into production. So,
Yeah.
maybe one day that won't be the case, but certainly for us, I think for the next few years at least, we need I view AI generated code, database design, etc. I view it as like an excited intern. It's someone who can like, oh look, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then you go, okay, but what about the following scenarios? I didn't think about that. So it's great to have an excited intern in your organization, even if it's an AI virtual one, but yet needs a bit of guiding and a bit of mentoring to make sure they do the right thing and learn.
Yeah. And just one more thing about this topic. Have you ever had a lot of issues with these fights or conflicts from the DBA point of view and the developer's point of view? Like, oh, the problem is the database that is not working well. So, and the DBA says, no, it's not the database. The database is fine. The issue is with your code that it was not developed well and things like that. Did you had a lot of issues and the situations like this during your career?
I've had a few here and there, and it's the cynical view is a database server that's running no applications generally runs fine, and uses virtually zero CPU. So whenever someone used to say to me, "I think there's a problem with the server," I would say, "I agree. It's probably you." And but I say that I say that in jest, but it comes back to that thing about ego. I think when you see conflicts in organizations, it's rarely about the problem at hand. It's when people refuse to work together. I've been on both sides of the equation. I've been a developer who's gone, working in a company I've gone to and said, we require this from the DBA to assist us. It might be we require this privilege or we require that. Now, there's three possible ways DBAs can respond here, right? And two of them are good. One of them is, yes, okay, here's how we navigate through to this solution, right? That's fine. The other one is DBA might say, no, I can't do that, but here's my reasons why. It might be a security risk. It might be a license violation. It might be it's going to cost us more in terms of cloud subscription, whatever. But there's, sometimes a DBA's role is to protect resources. That's part of their role. And so sometimes it is the correct response to deny what a developer wants, but with justification. So those two responses are fine. Where you see most conflict is when a developer asks something, DBA says no. Or a DBA simply does something and a developer is unaware of it, or vice versa. A developer jams something into production without letting a DBA know, and it creates havoc. all those things you can imagine, they come back to what I call respectful communication. Teams that succeed well blur the lines between developer and DBA, not because of the role they're playing, it's because they can communicate with each other. Those companies that have failed projects, generally they always come down to comms and respect issues. Because that's when you see friction amongst teams, when one team doesn't respect another team. So as I said, it always comes down to the human factor. Yeah, you can always tell a good DBA in a project because the developers are happy to go visit them. Similarly, you can always tell a good development team on a project because they involve DBAs in their decision-making processes. So,
And I have some quick talks here, still about conference that I didn't ask you. And the first one, it's about your experience in Brazil, because you came here for the GOB, it's the Oracle users group from Brazil in 2018. And how was your experience? Do you remember what things you ate, you drink, or what you most like, and how was the conference in that period? I was there, and I watched you, but as we talk a little bit later before the recording, I was a shy guy. I was starting my time in the conference as a speaker, so we didn't have much time to talk. But I saw you, and I wanted to know how was your experience that you remember from that time.
I had an absolutely wonderful time in whenever I've been to Latin America. I've always found the hosts there in each of the cities just absolutely a delight, very hospitable, very understanding of my terribly monolingual voice, being stuck simply with English. So people have been very supportive, very understanding. Brazil was lovely. I'm a carnivore. I do like eating meat, and so most of the restaurants we went to were very protein based. I will let you in a little secret, which I've never revealed to this day. My partner Genevieve came along as well, and she's a vegetarian. And so whenever we went out, she would always whisper in my ear. She says, "Do not tell any of your friends I'm vegetarian," because she didn't want to be, a problem. And so my poor Genevieve, every time we would go out and have this meeting, and then we would go back to the hotel, and she would, go to the mini bar and have some snacks. So, but that was we enjoyed the time. It was absolutely fantastic. I will tell one funny story from Brazil, which people had mentioned. They said, "Oh, you're going to Sao Paulo, be careful, it's dangerous, etc." But I never saw any of that. I always thought the people were lovely and friendly. And so I left I was, getting ready to fly to the next country thinking, there's nothing to worry about here. It was actually fine. And I booked a hotel car from the hotel back to the airport. And I get in the car and my driver says a few things in Portuguese, which I didn't understand. Then he realizes that I don't speak Portuguese and he goes, "Oh, my apologies, Mr. McDonald. I just wanted to say, I hope you enjoyed your stay at the hotel. We're off to the airport now." And I'm sitting back and I'm relaxing. And he goes, "I just want to, rest assured, the car is fully armored." And I was like, "Armored? Why would the car? Why would the car need to be armored?" And he goes, "Oh, just in case anything bad happens." At which point, of course, my heart rate went through the roof because I had seen nothing. All I'd seen this lovely place, and my driver's telling me, "Yep, the car is protected from bullets," and I'm going, "Okay, this doesn't sound good." But that was my only worry.
Nice. Okay, yeah. There are some cars that it's like this, but see, like everywhere in the world, there are danger things, there are danger places, but most of the time it's fine. It's not so secure like other countries, but Brazil, it's a very good place, and São Paulo, it's a big city, and have some bad things.
City. Yeah. And that's the thing, as I said at the start, I would love to come back. But the challenge for me is we have a number of resources now in Oracle who like going to conferences and happen to speak Spanish and Portuguese. And so as an English speaker, trying to convince my manager that I should go is a tough one, but I would absolutely love to go back there. Some of my best friends I've made in relationships are made from those Latin America tours. Like, so, you probably know Edelweiss and Nelson from Uruguay and Rita from Argentina. And I was about to say Alex, of course, from Brazil, but of course, Alex now works for Oracle. But yeah, like just, and Francisco, who's based in Australia, but obviously has close ties to Chile. So many good memories from that tour, those tours. And so I would love to get back, but I live in hope.
Nice. Yeah, I really like you should come. So let's do movement here in the Golden Talks. People start to comment, and people who know your boss will ask him, "Hey, let's make Connor go to Brazil." because you went before and we are missing you. So let's try to help with that. So
I am
the
100% on board with that.
yeah. So people that is watching us, send this video to the corner boss and say, hey, help Dave and leave he come to Brazil because he is very welcome and it's a very good time before the pandemic and with all of these changes with NAI and I'm sure that it's going to be a very nice opportunity next year.
That'd be cool.
Okay, nice. And there is another conference that I was checking that you are very famous and people really enjoy. It's from India, IDIATRA, that you went, I think 1 month, maybe 1.5 months ago. So can you share with us a little bit about this conference in a different country, different culture, and with a lot of people? I had never went there. I hope one day I will be able to go there, but I know that you went there sometimes. So can you share about this conference to us?
I would recommend anyone who's a speaker to go on the Yatra tour at least once because it's just an amazing glimpse into Indian culture. And don't get me wrong, some of it is absolutely breathtaking. Some of it is quite confronting because India is such a diverse population. So there's some amazing things, incredible architecture, incredible history. But in the same token, there are some people who are having incredibly tough lives. And so as a result, you see the entire gamut of Indian society. But from a technical perspective, the Yatra tour, I will admit, is challenging as a speaker because typically it's 6 cities in 7 days or somewhere around that thing. So literally it's you do your talks, you get in a car from the event center, go to the airport, you land maybe at midnight, go to the hotel, and then you get up next day and do it all again. And you just keep doing that. There's the occasional rest day. But I'll give a credit to the Indian Oracle User Group president, Sai Penamuru. He does an amazing job to look after the speakers. He recommends flights, recommends hotels, organizes all the logistics. So he literally tries to make it such that all the speakers have to do is obviously book things, but other than that, just do their talks. And so from a logistics perspective, for a speaker, doing an event that complicated, it's much easier than it could have been, which is fantastic. But putting aside the fact that you're speaking, the Indian tech audiences are amazing. They're young, they're incredibly engaged. They really are desperate to learn. To give you a good example of this is Sai's biggest challenge each year is the cities that don't have their event on the weekend, believe it or not. All the cities want to have their event on the weekend, not during the week, because during the week, people will do their work. They won't sacrifice their work to come to a conference, but they will happily sacrifice their own personal time to come educate themselves on the weekend. So what happens is each of the cities says, we don't want to run our event during the week. We want to run it on the Saturday or the Sunday because we'll get many more people. We get higher engagement. So one of Sai's challenges is finding which cities to run it on the weekends. Now, I don't know about Latin America. If I was participating in an event in Australia and it was on a Saturday, there would be one person at the event. That would be me speaking. And the audience would not be there because they value their personal time. In India, the audiences there are so engaged with the technology. They're so passionate about it. They will happily give up their own personal time in order to do personal growth. So we get, on the Saturday, Sunday sessions at each of the cities, you're typically looking at 300 people. And during the week, we might have between 150 and 200, but the 4 cities on the weekends, the 2 Saturday, Sundays that bookmark the event, typically 300 people, and they've given up their personal time. Sometimes they're driving for hours to get to these events because of the Indian traffic, which in itself is an interesting exercise. But yeah, I recommend it to anyone because especially if you've never seen India, even if you just want to see India from a personal perspective, not from a tech perspective, to have a host like Sai who's going to manage the logistics, you're going to be looked after, you're going to be with a group of other people as well. So when you go sightseeing, you're not going to feel like isolated. It's a fantastic event. I'd recommend it for any speaker. Because it's just a wonderful way to see India and the Indian culture, as well as picking up some amazing tech.
Nice. So I think, and I'm wondering now that I need to have the South phone number when I go to India.
I can get you in touch with Sai. No problems.
Okay, nice. Okay, it's a good idea. Thanks for that. And do you know how many countries did you went for conference? Do you have this number?
I'd have to look at my passport.
How many passports? I suppose many of them, not only one.
So in terms of, I suppose the most one would be tours. So I've done the EMEA tour over the years. So that's often, several countries in Europe. I lived in the UK. I've done Ireland. The USA is an obvious one, and the Latin America tour. Done some things in Asia. There's obviously India, but we've done some Cloud World stuff in Singapore, in Japan over the years. The one place I've never been to for an Oracle thing is Africa. I many years ago, I worked in Zimbabwe for a few months. This is literally in the late 80s when I was still working with this mining company. But other than that, I've seen very little of Africa. And I'm very fortunate this year is I've been invited to speak at the South African Oracle User Group Conference in November. So that'll be my first time in South Africa. I'm very much looking forward to that. They've been wonderfully welcoming. I get plenty of emails from them explaining what's going to happen and where it's at. So looking forward to that. And I suppose for me, in terms of personal development, I constantly submit to the Devoxx and Voxed conferences, which are more developer-based conferences. Because I want to try to get the Oracle database message out to developers. I think the more developers know about database technology, the more successful they'll be in building applications. But also, a lot of these events are held in places I've never been, and so it'd be nice to to reach out to new audiences in new places. Because just to grow the spread of Oracle knowledge around the world.
Thanks. Okay, good. Hope you have a good time in this experience. And I have one another question about how is your process to learn things? Do you have any? When you need to learn something new, what do you usually do? You're trying to, for instance, watching videos, looking for books, look for blog posts, anything?
For me, the first thing I'll try to do is use it. Like if it's a new database feature, I'll try to build a little demo for myself, just to get the idea of, does it actually work in the way I suspect it to work? Just purely in terms of, can I get this thing working, first of all? And that might be, when I was trying to teach myself Java, same thing. Let's get a hello world going and whatever. Once I get to a point where I have a working, very basic understanding, then I'll normally try to take a step back and try find blogs, books, videos, which are more big picture. Because one of the easy traps to get into is if you build something simple in a feature, whether it's a new language, a new database feature, whatever, is to think, okay, I'm ready for production. And so it's very easy to have that very small view of like, yep, I got it to work, therefore it's ready for production, or it's ready, or I'm happy to sign off my knowledge on this thing. So I'll get a little small working example first, then I'll try force myself to look at big picture, because without big picture, I think you can get a very small view of things. Then I'll try expand my knowledge of it now that I have an idea of the big picture of how it sits into the world of IT. And then the next thing I'll do typically is, because I'm just a natural vandal, I'll try break it. One of my favorite terms, they call it testing to destruction, because
destruction.
It's unless you know where things break, you don't really know where things work. And often you'll pick up a lot of knowledge about how something actually hangs together by trying to break it, finding out where the boundary cases are, finding out where the outlier cases are. And often it's not necessarily a problem with the actual tool or platform or language you're using. Often it's your lack of understanding. But whatever the problem is, you end up getting something positive out of it. You think, you might say, I found a bug in the feature, fine. Or it might be, I found a bug in how I'm meant to be using it. That's also fine. You adapt and learn. So.
Yeah, really nice. Okay, good. And let's talk a little quick about the AI, the innovations of AI and the database AI features like Vector and so on. How do you see these change, and what do you expect for the future?
Well, that's a big question. Maybe it's because I've been in the IT for so long. I'm a natural cynic when anything new comes along. So I think what's the official term? They call it the Gartner hype cycle. It's like we think something will do this, and very quickly we find it does this, and then normally it ends up somewhere in the middle over time. So that the hype, what's it called? The trough of disillusionment, and then it ends up being somewhere in the middle. So I think we're definitely in an AI hype cycle at the moment. And whereas every vendor, and don't get me wrong, Oracle included, every single vendor is saying AI is the way to go. It's the future. It's everything. It's going to transform your lives, etc. I think it's going to have obviously a significant impact on our IT careers, our IT lives, and our personal lives. But I don't think it's going to be as absolutely life-changing as people often say it is. I see these things out there saying 50% of all jobs will disappear due to AI, etc. Maybe in 30, 40, 50 years, but I don't see it happening next year, as people tend to say. In terms of just the actual inside in my sphere of influence, where the database, I think the big thing for AI I like is semantic search. I know that if you go to every website nowadays, and Oracle's the same, wherever you go nowadays, there'll be some banner saying we've added AI to our products, and the first demo you'll always see is some sort of natural language demo. Here, talk to Dorothy, our assistant. She's going to help you book a flight. Talk to Stephen, our AI assistant. He's going to help you with your service call, etc. Because that's a very compelling kind of demo. People love seeing that because it looks, it's like it's that thin line between IT and magic. So it looks great. But I don't think people are going to do that for every single application they have. A lot of applications don't need that kind of involvement. It's great. It looks compelling. I think more applications are going to use just what I would call more simpler baseline AI features, things like vector search. Because, for example, I do this demo in my 23 AI talk in terms of you might have a list of food recipes, stored on a table. Yet if I type in, I'm looking for a recipe for, that involves steak, like a nice, well-cooked steak. At the moment in most people's search applications, if the actual word steak does not appear, they get no hits. Whereas with a vector search, it knows, oh, steak. Okay, it's a protein, it's an animal protein. If it sees things like beef or venison or lamb or whatever, it's going to know that, yes, these things are all correlated in some way. So I think the first thing we'll see where AI stuff just absolutely dominates applications for the next couple of years is search, because it'll be a game changer for search. And let's face it, 99% of applications out there eventually, maybe not on day one, typically have some sort of ad hoc search facility for their customers. Even internal applications, like in many inside Oracle, if you're, searching for things on Slack, if you're searching for things in Confluence, if you're searching for things in your email, all those kind of core enterprise applications, I think most people say the search facilities and those tools are junk. It's probably the most common complaint people have is enterprise software across the board generally has terrible search facilities. It's either slow or it's hard to find stuff. So I think companies will put, for all their applications, whether they're running on Oracle database or anything else, I think they'll put vector search on top of them. And I think that'll be the first real game changer, the fact that search finally works. I'm sure in your experience, you've seen similar things where customers often come to you and you've built an Oracle application. They go, why can't it be like Google? We just want to type in keywords and somehow magically it works out what the results should be best. I think that'll be the first real jump for AI technology. I think the game changer that is search in applications everywhere. After that, I think we'll start to see more examples of natural language stuff, etc. But the reason I'm somewhat cynical of natural language is you've probably seen many demos from a lot of vendors out there, including ourselves, where people say, remember you used to type in an SQL statement and you would get your results. Now I can simply say, what are the sales results for last year? And magically that becomes SQL, and then magically here comes our results. The reason I'm still cynical on that is, why did we invent SQL? In fact, why did we invent any coding languages? Because natural language, by definition, has ambiguity and is not precise. We had to invent languages that were precise because we had precise requirements. And so the concept of saying, I can convert a natural language command to a SQL statement, I think fundamentally has a challenge. Not because of the algorithm, is because natural language is by design ambiguous. And I've been playing with things on ChatGPT where you say, show me the sales for last year, and you get a number. Then I say, for last year, what were the sales? And you get a different number. And then you say, in 2024, can you tell me what the sales were? And you get a third different number, because natural language is full of ambiguity. And therefore, the resulting SQL is full of ambiguity. I'm not sure how we overcome that challenge. I see natural language for things like generating applications like Apex, things like that. I see a much bigger sort of avenue there, because that's natural language generating metadata, and then metadata then gets interpreted to build applications. I think that model has more legs in it than taking natural language to generate raw SQL. I think that's a big jump. And it's like you see a lot of demos out there. In fact, I put this on a blog post I posted yesterday. I said, you see a lot of demos out there where someone says, to use the salary example, they go, show me the salary for all my customers. And the demo works because in their database, they have a table called customers, and a column called salary. And so unsurprisingly, your LLM does a fantastic job in working that out. But real applications aren't like that. Real applications, the employees table is called XF279, if you're running something like SAP. The salary column is a column called SA184X, but you only use that if the total forecast figure in this particular column in this other table has a date greater than this, and the commission value stored in this as just, because business requirements over the years have got so ridiculously complicated, the database models that support them are either ridiculously complicated or terribly documented or just a giant spaghetti, because most business data models evolve over time. And so the blog post I did yesterday was talking about the fact that I am thrilled for the fact that the only way AI engines are going to be able to work with this is if we start documenting our databases again. Like we were taught 20 years ago, putting commentary on all the tables, commentary on all the columns, using annotations in 23AI or domains, and having a really rigorous set of metadata in the data dictionary to tell AI engines where all this stuff is. How do you actually find out what someone's salary is? So I'm looking forward to that, because as a DBA, I used to tell, for projects, I insist on having comments on every single column, every single table. And the developer's like, that's too much work. We'll never use it. It's too hard, etc. So maybe it won't be in the database. Maybe it'll be in some other repository. But I look forward to the days where we have to start actually documenting our data models really rigorously again.
Yeah, it's a big jump and an important thing. And we still seeing things like it was before, and it's about store data and retrieve the data. So during all of these decades, how to do this, it's changing year by year with SQL, NoSQL, now with vector search. And yeah, it's interesting to see this point of view that you mentioned, especially with the talk about that the human language, it's ambiguous, and it is true. And this can cause data retrieval different, as you mentioned. So yeah, let's see what's gonna happen for the next years. Okay, Connor, we are here for 1 hour and a half, and
I did warn you I can't talk too much.
Yeah, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun with you, and we are getting at the end of your golden talk session. And I want to thank you once again very much for your availability, for your time. And one of the best things that we have is our time, and you are giving it for us in this session. So thank you very much with that, especially that you are in Australia in a different time zone. So I really appreciate that.
It's been an absolute joy to speak to you.
Okay. And I hope to see you personally. And are you gonna be in the Oracle AI World?
I'll be AI World. Yeah. I hope you'll be at my session. Time for me to plug my session. 23 AI features, come along. It'll be on Wednesday afternoon.
Sure. Okay. So we are gonna meet there for have a talk, and so see you soon. Okay, and I'm gonna end the golden talk session as I always do. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe in the channel, to give your like, and the most important thing, replicate knowledge and share this video. So guys, thank you very much to stay with us here, and see you soon. Thank you, Connor, once again, and bye-bye.